Hey folks, today I've got my full review of the new COROS Pod 2, and this is an interesting one. So in this review, I'm basically going to walk through what the Pod 2 is, then I'm going to talk about some of the use cases, talk about some of the data and the accuracy, and then talk about why you may or may not actually want one. Pretty straightforward, and this shouldn't take too long in the grand scheme of things. So the Pod 2 is this little doohickey right there. This is the box it comes in. It's 99 bucks for the Pod 2. It comes with a pod, so this piece here, let me just show you this real quick. It comes with this little pod right there, and then it has two of these running shoe clips that you see like that, and then it has one waistband clip, so you clip this on the back of your running shorts. Then it's got a charging dock that you see right there, it includes a little cable like this. I've got it plugged into a USB battery bank so I can show you what happens when you plug it in. There we go, just pop it in like that, and then it starts charging. Pretty straightforward, really. It charges USB-C, battery life here on the bottom, will be about 28 hours or so in running mode, and then a whole bunch more days in standby mode. In fact, it's also worthwhile noting that the charging pod there actually has batteries in itself. It can basically charge the pod another 3 times over. That's pretty cool. It's like a little USB battery bank built right into it. Now, the reason there's two different basically pod cases, not pod cases, pod holders, if you will, comes with 2 of the running clip or running shoe ones, and then again, 1 of the waistband ones, is because there's different types of data it'll transmit. So the existing Pod 1 was it was entirely worn on your running shorts, and that transmitted primarily running dynamics metrics or running efficiency metrics, things like ground contact time and stride, left, right balance, that kind of stuff. But it did not transmit pace and distance. So it wasn't used for pace and distance like a footpod is. And that's where the second piece is right there. So when you take this out of the charging pop, let me just pop, there we go, take that out. I do, by the way, appreciate that it's actually a bit chunkier. That way when it gets down to the bottom of my backpack, I can actually find this little case. The Stride one is much smaller, but it's also easier to lose. So in this case, you take this, get this other one out of the shoe out of the way for the moment. You simply put it on your running shoe like this, pop it in the right direction, there we go, and you're done. It's as simple as that. And then you shake this thing and it wakes up, and then from there you pair it to your COROS watch. And I say COROS watch because this does not support any other watches or data platforms or apps or anything like that. It is purely COROS, and that's something we're going to dive into a little later on. So basically, once you have your COROS watch, you go to accessories, you add an accessory, you pair it right there, super straightforward. Then you'll see it when you go to start a run. So on the left-hand side, it'll show in this new kind of pairing menu, or new menu if you will, show you that it's paired up with the sensor, and then you just simply start running. Now, depending on which mode you're in, if you're in footpod mode here, then you're going to get basically the running kind of pace-rated metrics. So in particular, you'll get your pace and distance, you'll get your cadence, you'll get your stride length, that all from this pod. But if you switch over into the waistband running shorts mode, then you're going to get your left-right balance, your ground contact time, your stride height, and your stride ratio. Now, it'll do that automatically. You don't need to manually switch things, that you can if you want in the settings, go and override into which mode it's in. In my case, the testing showed that worked just fine as well. Now, there's also 3 other data points that you get with this. You get the temperature, altitude, and elevation gain and loss. And so basically it'll pull that from kind of combination of data from your watch and the pod, depending on different circumstances. There's an entire chart that explains this all right here. And then you also get what is called basically GPS assistance, meaning that there's no GPS in this, but there is gyros and accelerometers, and it uses that to theoretically improve the GPS track. Yeah, it doesn't. I'll just spoil that part of the accuracy section right there. In fact, actually, it made it worse in my testing, but that's neither here nor there. So once you're running long, it's going to show pace just like normal, though they have added a tiny bit of text that shows you that the pace is coming from the pod as opposed to not from the pod, which is kind of nice. But otherwise, the whole premise of the pod is that it's going to have faster responsiveness for pace than GPS-based or wrist-based metrics, and that'll just do it better and more smoothly and all that kind of stuff. It'll just be better. That's their premise. That's why you should pay 99 bucks for this. And so let's dive into whether or not that's actually true, whether or not it's actually faster. And for that, I basically set up a circuit course, including a bunch of tunnel overpasses. It's like a 14 or 18 lane bridge of road stuff and rail stuff above me. It's like the biggest thoroughfare into Amsterdam that you can imagine. So in order to compare this data, I've got a bunch of different sensors. I've got the Stride Gen 2 foot pod that you see right there, this little thing. I've got the Garmin HRM Pro Plus running heart rate chest strap that does a lot of the same kind of data. I had that on there. I had a Garmin Forerunner 955, which is in the same price ballpark as the COROS Vertex 2 without any sensors, just by itself doing its own thing. And then I had the COROS Pod, and then I had also the Vertex 2 both with and without the COROS Pod, so 2 different test runs. So by the way, I forgot to mention, this comes in a case. I don't know why you need the case, but you got one. So let's look at the very first data set, which is from standstill into running steady state pace. It would take me about 1 to 2 seconds to get to that steady state pace. In this case, like a long run pace, about 7:30s a mile, 4 something or so a kilometer. And the COROS Pod took 6 seconds to get to that point. The Vertex 2 without the pod took 8 to 10 seconds to get to that point. The Forerunner 955 with no sensors or anything like that, about 6 to 7 seconds. So basically the same as the pod. The HRM Pro Plus, 6 seconds, again, the same ballpark. And the Stride V2, about 5 to 6 seconds. Again, same general ballpark. So basically, outside of COROS's own watch, everyone else within like 6 seconds plus or minus 1 second. The Vertex 2 was sort of the slow boat there. Then we go on to, I'm going steady state running, and now I go into an interval sprint. So I dropped down to like 530 mile, about 330-ish or so kilometer, I think. The COROS Pod took 2 to 3 seconds to respond to that. The Vertex 2, we'll get back to that in a second. The Forerunner 955 took 4 seconds to respond. The HRM Pro Plus took 6 to 8 seconds, and the Stride V2 took 3 seconds. And in general, if you made that transition slowly, then things took longer to adjust, and not just because you made it slowly, but just because they were like double checking their figures or something. If you made that transition very sharply, then the numbers were generally better. However, the one number that matters here is the Vertex 2 took between 6 and 14 seconds to make that transition. I did all these transitions and all these tests like half a dozen times per each test pass, and I did multiple test passes, and so they're kind of like the average of things. But in that sense, I can see why COROS would say that this is much better than GPS, and it's true. It's much better than their GPS. But if I look at the Forerunner 955, which is same price as this, actually cheaper than this, in fact, that was basically just the same as the pod, within 1 second of the pod, and sometimes the exact same as a pod, and even sometimes faster than the pod. So yeah, there's that. Then we go to stopping. How long does it take when I'm just going from steady state running or at a faster pace to just zero, just straight up standing still? In the case of the COROS Pod, 4 to 5 seconds. In the case of the Forerunner 955, 5 to 6 seconds. In the case of the HRM Pro Plus, 5 to 6 seconds. In the Stride, about 4 seconds. But there's some catches on that one. The Vertex 2, 6 to 8 seconds. So again, the slowest of the boat. Now, I mentioned there are some quirks with the Stride. I've noticed a couple things here, doing lots of comparison testing. One, when I made that stop, even though like the data on the screen showed effectively 0, there was a tiny bit of like noise floor there where it showed like 1 kilometer an hour, which is weird for quite a while after staying stopped. I'm not sure if that's a Stride issue or a recording issue on the watch, but that's there. I didn't notice it while I was running, but only looking at the data afterwards. So for what it's worth. Meanwhile, also I noticed in a couple cases when I would accelerate, the Stride would accelerate way faster than I was actually running briefly. And so for like 3 to 5 seconds, it would overshoot the target and then kind of come back down again to life. That's just what it is. I try to basically find that standardization moment where things stabilized before I kind of called that as the number of how many seconds it took to get there. So then what about pace stability? Again, this is an area that COROS harped on in the marketing, that this is all about pace stability, especially if you're running in a GPS dense or challenging environment. So again, underneath the bridges and whatnot, I looked at these charts right here, and pace stability from GPS, both their own as well as Garmin's, was just fine. Like there was no real issues. And I think this gets to sort of like one of the core challenges with a pod in 2022 is that as more and more watches move to multi-band, including COROS's and Garmin's and others, the need for foot pods continues to decrease. It was already decreasing as it was, but multi-band GPS accuracy in the right hands anyways can be incredibly accurate. And so it's tough to kind of justify these sort of things when the data doesn't lie. There's just no need for it. And this is a really challenging section to run with there was no GPS in sections, and it's doing just fine. Because the other thing to keep in mind is every GPS watch made in the last even decade or so uses wrist-based accelerometer data to go ahead and fuse that with the GPS data to sort of sort out these kind of things. And the more recent watches even use not just accelerometers, but gyros to do that. And so you've got all these data inputs coming in. Suunto used to, maybe they still do, call it fused speed, or basically to blend all those metrics together. And the data is just super clean. And now I will caveat that in my kind of history, if you will, of running, I find that I am a very stable runner when it comes to pace. So much so that people often look at my pace stability and like, how is that so perfect? You must have like some special build or something like that. I just tend to run in a very stable manner, even without looking at my watch. And so if you're someone that either has an older device that may be less stable, or maybe you are just simply a less stable runner when it comes to that, keeping very, very stable pace, then you might find more benefit with some of these devices that can go ahead and track that in a better manner than an older GPS watch. Now, before we talk about the kind of my final thoughts, we can talk about one last area, which is something they're calling effort pace. And this is not new, it's just rebranded yet again. So COROS, or not COROS, generally speaking, there's something called grade adjusted pace. The idea being that if you're on a flat surface like this, grade adjusted pace should be the same as your actual pace, right? So if you're running a 7-minute mile, then it's a 7-minute mile on this flat surface. But if you go up a hill, then grade adjusted pace will adjust accordingly so that you can kind of compare hilly courses or courses with a lot of up and down terrain versus flat courses. It's a cool concept. We've seen a lot of running watches adapt it or adopt to it over the last year or so especially, but platforms like Training Peaks and others have been doing this for many, many years. Now COROS has adjusted pace on their watches. They don't call it grade adjusted pace, they call it just adjusted pace. But with today's update, they're renaming that adjusted pace to effort pace. And this is something that they're really focused on being like the next greatest trend in stuff with this new effort pace. And they say down the road, it'll include other personalized variables, including humidity and your heart rate and all sorts of weird stuff, but it'd be a better way to compare things. And that sounds interesting, but they provided no meaningful details on what that actually means going down the road, other than just kind of saying it'll get better down the road. And then they want other companies to adopt effort pace as well. But we already have grade adjusted pace. Everyone's kind of adopted that. That's sort of the point of this whole thing. And maybe effort pace will be cool down the road, but again, there's no details at all. I could call it like cupcake pace or pizza pace today, and it would have just as much value. Today, effort pace by COROS's own admission is simply just adjusted pace renamed, in the same way that adjusted pace is simply just grade adjusted pace renamed. They just renamed something that's already there, which then gets to sort of like the missed opportunity here. If this footpod actually was compatible with everyone else, if it supported these standard Bluetooth Smart and AMP Plus protocols, then I would say, for 99 bucks to have something that's seemingly just as accurate as the Stride footpod for non-running power purposes, because this doesn't do running power in any way, shape, or form, because it would infringe upon Stride's patents, so they're not doing a running power in the pod. But anyways, if it was 99 bucks for a footpod that was super accurate, then I would say go team. But it's not. It's not compatible with any third-party stuff at all. So in essence, COROS is asking the entire industry, they're hoping in their press materials, they say they're hoping the rest of the industry will adopt effort pace, their proprietary rename thing of something that was already a standard. So they're asking the whole industry to adopt that while concurrently shunning the entire industry's, Bluetooth Smart and AMP Plus protocols for footpods, as well as even running efficiency metrics. There are standards out there today that all their competitors use in some way, shape, or form, and they've shunned all those standards. Why? Like, you had an opportunity to make easy money on this pod at 99 bucks to the people that want it, that somewhat niche market, and kind of continue to be a niche market, but instead you've only locked it to the COROS watches, and then with that, you've made a new metric that has no purpose on this planet at this point in time. So anyways, hopefully they'll change their mind. Maybe this might persuade them to do that. But I think right for now, I don't see much of a reason to purchase this pod, especially at 99 bucks, especially being COROS only, and especially with the direction of GPS watches in 2022 and going beyond. It's a pretty hard sell for me. Hopefully you found this video interesting or useful or something like that. If so, just give it a like at the bottom there or hit subscribe for plenty more sports technology goodness. Have a good one.